Well, it's been a week and we've learned a lot. We know now why ex Stellantis CEO Carlos Tavares got kicked out of his job. We know now why Nissan has been struggling to make sales. We now know why the Toyota Tundra is setting sales records hasn't seen in 17 years. We now know why changes have happened throughout the industry, including Tesla Cybertruck maybe delaying production, maybe closing down, but maybe not. Interesting information for that. And we have Canadian production of vehicles dropping lowest levels in years. We have just a lot of stuff going on, including a really cool milestone for this channel I'll get to in this week's Truck News Recap. Hey, it's Tim, Pickup Truck Plus SG Talk. I had to record the intro about 7 times. There's so much going on this week. I thank you for being along with the ride. If you haven't been to these Truck News Recaps, I do these weekly. I cover topics that you may have heard about during the week or maybe you didn't hear about. And I find a lot of people that aren't as clued in the automotive industry like I am missed some things. And I thought just put together a Truck News Recap. So if you're a recurring viewer, thank you for watching. I like these shows. It's fun for me, and well, I hope it's fun for you. So let's go ahead and get to the details. So this report came. It's on Auto News. It's a subscription-based report, but it's a Reuters story. So let's just talk about it. So it's from Auto News Europe. It says Carlos Tavares ousted because of radical targets at Stellantis. So the story is the journalists have talked to 2 people familiar with knowledge of the matter, and people can't talk and the stuff that being retribution and stuff happening to them. But they also have a source, Stellantis CFO, Doug Osterman, who's in the running to take the job of head of Stellantis. He has some comments as well. So basically what happened was there was a lot of unhappiness with aggressive targets for sales and cost cuts. This really impacted things happening in the European Union. We'll get to that in just a minute. And his contentious dealings with automakers, suppliers, dealers, and unions. The board was not happy with his brash style. They said something broke in November, one source said, because he had the support of the board in October. November, something just changed. Okay. These other clashes haven't been previously reported. Tavares has not responded to requests for comments. He probably never will. So Doug Osterman was talking at a virtual event for Goldman Sachs, and he had some comments to say. He says, those related to tactical issues on how to run the business over that short-term time period, that was at 15 months left with Tavares' term, and what action should be taken in regard to short-term metrics versus long-term benefit of the company. Disagreements also emerged in relations Stellantis was having with dealers, suppliers, unions, and governments. Osman said, clearly we need to build back trust. And you saw letters to dealers, sent open letters to Stellantis asking for change. Unions were really mad at him, and governments were mad at him because French members of the government are on the board of directors for Stellantis. So Osterman, who's seen as a potential candidate, has served through different roles of Fiat Chrysler and stuff. So he also noted that Stellantis is confident that the expected improvements and performance could allow the automaker to pay a dividend in 2025. He said the automaker, which in September issued a shock profit warning for its 2024 results, had the ability to generate cash and perform well in 2025. So in his view, the company's doing pretty well. It's just the changes that Tavares was trying to make with these radical targets really annoyed people. It also annoyed people the way he spoke in the media, in the comments he made. I've done many Truck News recaps where I've talked about things he said, brash comments coming from a CEO. Board members were annoyed in October at a Paris auto show when Tavares publicly blamed the automaker's U.S. management for falling sales and rising inventories in the market. The board continued to back him after that. In November, however, Tavares' brash style led to a totally unattainable relationship with the board, whose members represented shareholders of Exor, the Peugeot family, and the French government. When board members started asking more specific questions about the executive strategies, the person said, quote, Tavares' reaction was, you do not interfere with my job. That is not your business. Wow. I've been on some board of directors. I've been on boards. That is your job. You do question the CEO. You are the checks and balances. Now, those and other issues were causing angst across the sprawling company as Tavares tangled with dealers, union suppliers, and governments, now board members. The person said, you cannot make enemies with everybody. The clash has led to Tavares being kicked out, even though the month prior, he had lots of support. Now, there's a lot of stuff that this Stellantis has to do, shares are down, kind of stuff. I want to get to this next part of the story, that Tavares had a rational view of EV quotas. So one source said this first set of tensions between Tavares and the board came over in recent weeks on how to handle European Union rules that will levy hefty fines unless electric vehicles account for at least 21% of Stellantis' 2025 sales. Now, currently, the automaker has 12% EV share. Tavares refused to back an auto industry lobbying push now underway to renegotiate the rules, saying instead that Stellantis would simply work to avoid fines. Now, historically, Stellantis has paid fines to the EPA in the United States, and I'm going to assume they paid fines elsewhere. I don't know that for sure because they do not sell enough of fuel efficient vehicles. So they don't meet their targets. And imagine every time you sell a vehicle, you pay a fine. That's bad. Tavares, the board feared the company would have to massively decrease combustion engine sales to hit the regulatory target. So to hit 21%, you sell less gas cars, and then you have less volume, you have less profit, and you have less people working in factories. Company staffers were, quote, totally lost over the, quote, irrationality of the view that Stellantis could achieve such a large EV share increase without fines. Both sources use the term radical to describe Tavares' sales targets. Tavares outlined other controversial plans at board meetings, saying he wanted to drastically cut costs in Europe that have already been, quote, cut to the bone, from what source said. Tavares, the source said, also proposed a cash management policy focused on 2024 at the expense of 2025 cash flow that might have exposed Stellantis to another new profit warning. And board members also bristled at Tavares' often contentious dealings with key players across what one source described as an ecosystem surrounding Stellantis, including tensions with suppliers, dealers, and consumers, the governments of Italy and France, and U.S. labor unions. Tavares, the supplier said, sometimes views suppliers as expendable in his cost-cutting drive, while board members worried that replacing trusted parts makers was not quick and caused disruption. The final quote says, "You cannot say that you're out to longtime suppliers. That puts at risk your very capacity to produce cars." Okay, so moving on from that story. So, basically we learned that Tavares was focused on what he wanted to do. He was very driven on his goals. He wasn't being a team player. He wasn't being a leader to bring people together. He was being divisive, and he was ignoring some real business issues, especially in Europe. Okay. And I would say United States too. There's a lot of controversy right now with Stellantis and Jeep sales and Ram and stuff. Over on the website, pickuptrucktalk.com, it has been a busy week over there. So, we have the other story. If I missed this in the intro, I'm sorry. I'll put this in the title of the video. Toyota reliability has dropped. Subaru takes top spot in new study. GMC Sierra Silverado HD recall. The Cybertruck production I wrote about. We have a Hyundai SUV recall, and we're going to get to these stories. Just give me a minute, because I want to talk about also no Nissan hybrid, because I did a story on that. I did a video on that and got some pushback from viewers. And then I got a really interesting quote from the CEO that kind of proved I was right. So, nana boo boo. Let's start with this one. Toyota reliability drops. Subaru takes top spot in new study. This is from Consumer Reports. Yes, people love the hate and love the like Consumer Reports. I get all that kind of stuff. So, to be clear, Toyota reliability is still pretty high. It's just no longer number one. So Subaru took the top spot, but by using more commonality of parts, which all automakers are kind of moving towards. So if you have a door switch that works in one vehicle, put it in all the vehicles and make sure it's the same part. That way you have less variations, and that's what they've done. So Crosscheck, Legacy, Outback, and Ascent all rated above average, and they use the parts throughout all those vehicles the same. So that's what the quote from Stephen Ellick says. Now it's interesting because the only one that scores below average is a Solterra, which was built in collaboration with, you guessed it, Toyota. Jill Sodinello, managing editor, wrote the story up. Really good way. She loved the way she wrote this up. So Toyota had 3 vehicles below average reliability in the study: Tacoma, Tundra, and the BZ4X. Now, we've had a 2024 Tacoma, had some transmission issues early on. We're seeing some fixes with that. We had the Tundra with a big recall. We saw an issue with a 2025 model Tundra that had a blown engine. We've had issues, SKU issues, 2024 models. I've been following that as well. So really, they've come down a notch. Lexus still has a pretty high marking, but they took a small hit in the study because the Lexus LX uses the same engine as the Tundra does. So looking at the report, you have Subaru, Lexus, Toyota, Honda. So again, Toyota and Lexus are still really high in this report. They're just not as high as they used to be. And we get down to the bottom, we have Rivian on the bottom, which I found this kind of fascinating. The Consumer Reports pointed out that EVs are having more problems, and plug-in hybrid EVs are having more problems than hybrids themselves, which I thought was a little fascinating, because usually EVs have less parts, so you would think they'd have less problems, but no, that's not the case. We have Chevrolet, GMC is near the bottom, Cadillac is way down there, and reliability. Ford is middle of the road. I don't see. I was going to look for Jeeps. Yeah, Jeeps. Actually, Jeeps better than GMC. That's really shocking. I don't see Ram or anybody else in this study. So I don't see them listed anywhere. So maybe they're even below that. I don't know. But that's the information we got from Consumer Reports. Let's go back to the homepage. The Chevy Silverado GMC Sierra HD recall, that's for the tailgates unexpected open. They added another 132,000 trucks to that recall. The Honda SUV recall is for rollaway risk. The Tesla Cybertruck production halted is interesting. So I wrote the story, and I got some Tesleratis who are mad at me. I have some friends who are just big Tesla. Well, that's fine. So employees have said, and employees told Business Insider outlet that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of this week, they did not have to go to work. They'd be paid full for their days, but they just stayed home. They start working again on December 6th with some production resuming. Now, the employees have also said they've had a really inconsistent schedule the last several months. They'd show up at the factory, either be sent home or given additional training exercises or cleaning duties. And one said, when I started at Tesla, you could expect to get overtime, not pay now. Now I feel you're lucky to get 40 hours. So then we talked about Tesla Cybertruck demand. We don't know what the sales are because Tesla doesn't break them out. Tesla has no PR team. So we don't know what the details are. So Electric, which is kind of a EV focused outlet, reports that demand was upwards of 2 million reservations when truck was announced. But now Fred Lambert, and who runs that site, and several outlets are saying that they've run through that 2 million reservation holders. And I was actually checking out on a story I'll show you in a minute about Tesla and reading some of the comments. And people are pointing out the same things, that they thought that Tesla could build a world beater truck and be amazing. But when they delivered the vehicle that was more expensive, had less range, and looked like a polygon experiment, or one of my friends said had trigonometry issues, it really made people upset, and that's why they didn't go through reservation holders. That's why people bailed on it. They're starting to offer a lease program for this truck, and Auto News is also reporting that Tesla is doing a lot more leases on their vehicles as well, trying to spur on sales. We have social media posts, this one that shows a bunch of Cybertrucks sitting outside of a dealership that's waiting to be sold, and there are lots of these in this video. Here we go. It's right here. Sorry if you listen to the podcast. It is, I'm going to guess, a few 100, maybe 50, maybe 50, 60 sitting there waiting to be sold. And then we have the counterpoint. This came out a couple days later from, it came out today. Tesla Oracle has a story, which I'm guessing they're fairly biased. But they said the problem is this tunnel, this boring, the Tesla boring company's coming in. They're putting a tunnel between the factory underneath a highway to the train station. So they're going to autonomously ship trucks underneath through this tunnel to get that aside and spur on the amount of supply sending out, improve the amount of the quickness they can ship these things up. And so they talked about this as far as being, this is what's going on. You have pictures of it. A guy flew his drone over there and checked it out because you can't actually talk to Tesla. And he's got all these pictures of these castings. And this is the exterior bodies of these trucks that are sitting out waiting to be built. So they counter that actually the tunnel is what's causing disruptions going on. They started the tunnel in July. And so you think about maybe October and last couple of months, they've had disruptions in building vehicles at the plant because they're working on putting the tunnel into the plant. And so that's what they're saying the issue is, but there's a lot of casting. So it's interesting. On the one hand, the Tesla Cybertruck is very controversial. And is demand there? Is demand not there? I don't know. It's just we have a lot of different varying stories in this. So there's your details on that. Give you the full story. So I want to look at what else was on the homepage. Again, sorry, long week, lots of information going on. So we talked about this, talked about that. Oh, and we got to talk about Nissan. So no Nissan hybrid led to vehicle's downfall, to the downfall of the company. So this was a shocking quote I found. And I'm shocked that the CEO actually said these words. That's the big shock, because usually you don't get this. And people said to me, well, Tim, it's not a problem with hybrids. Nobody cares about hybrids. And in the comments. But actually, what he said was, in an MSM article, where the quote was right there. He says, this is the CEO, Yukida. This has been a lesson learned, and we have not been able to keep up with the times, he said. And this is quoted. We weren't able to foresee that hybrid electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids would be so popular. Think about that. He's getting paid millions of dollars a year, and he didn't foresee the growth in hybrid electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids. That's crazy to me. And they have laid off 9,000 people, 20% of the workforce. They're cutting production in the US by 17%. They're trying to cut costs $2.6 billion globally because of his mistake. People are losing their jobs because of this guy's mistake. And the CFO of Nissan just left. He just basically stepped down and took another job because he sees how badly it's going. The Rogue and the Frontier, when they're two top-selling vehicles, they also cut by 40,000 units a couple months ago. Now, what's interesting to me is what happens to the rivals. So, for example, its chief Japanese rivals, Toyota, and I don't know why they changed the hybrid, but I'll change it after this video, have put hybrids in nearly every SUV and sedan. In fact, one of the best-selling models for Toyota is the Toyota RAV4, which, by the way, there's 5 photos out there of a new model coming out. Now, I came out with a hybrid powertrain 8 years ago in a 2016 model year. Honda, its CR-V hybrid came out in 2020 model year. So your chief competitors have had hybrids in their vehicles for 8 to 4 years. So you've had years to develop this stuff. Those two SUVs alone combined for nearly 800,000 sales year to date. Meanwhile, Nissan Rogue has 190,000 sales, and it's down 10.4% year to date. They blew it. And you think about how hot a hybrid sells. I found this story on Aragon National Laboratory. They're a multidisciplinary science and engineering research center. Boy, I can say that well. So in October 2024, the hybrid electric vehicles we had 145,000 sold in the United States, up 40.6% from the sales in October 2023. So hybrids themselves were up 40% in just a year. That's how popular it's become. Toyota accounted for 51.2% share of the total hybrid sales this month. A total of 132,799 plug-in hybrids were sold during October 2024 in the United States. That's up 16.2% from the sales in October 2023. So a year over year, plug-in hybrids are up 16%. Hybrids themselves are up 40%. And this CEO completely blew it. He had no idea that sales of hybrids were going to be that popular. If I was a Nissan employee and I'm losing my job, I would just be pissed off this guy. And now they're trying to find an investment partner, trying to merge with somebody. If they merge with somebody, he's the first guy I'd fire, flat out. You can't be the CEO of a major company and miss that news. Other news, Canadian auto industry set to fall 1.3 million in 2024. So a lot of stuff going on in Canada right now. The Canadian automotive plants are set to produce about 1.3 million vehicles in 2024, the lowest level in decades outside the COVID pandemic, as U.S. companies idle factories in the country amid slowing demand, according to the manufacturing think tank. So what's happening here is that the demand is dropping for the big three, and they have plants in Ford's got plants, Stellantis got plants, and GM's got plants. And looking at the numbers, you have all this then you have the politics, right? So U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has threatened to impose a 25% tariff on all goods coming from Canada. So it's going to make those vehicles even more expensive. So it's very interesting what's going on. So they're talking about the Ford Motor Company's only Canadian assembly plant, the one in Oakville that was supposed to produce an EV, then it went back to producing something else, then it was going to do something else, then it finally going to build an F-Series Super Duty trucks in Oakville, but not until 2026. So Ford's up in the air what to do there. Stellantis plant in Brampton, Ohio, made its last Chrysler 300C sedan about a year ago. The plant is meant to ramp up with a future model of Jeep, maybe the Jeep Recon, but it hasn't said anything. The GM plant is still operating, but operating at well under capacity, making electric commercial vans in the market experiencing weak activity from buyers. Canadians are important buyers of U.S. vehicles. Hey, a lot of Canadian viewers on this channel. That's why I picked the story. About 50% of the cars and light trucks sold in the country are made in American plants as measured by dollar value. Mexico now has 15% of the market. Canadian-made cars and trucks have declined to 9%, and the rest of the market includes vehicles from Japan, Germany, South Korea, and other countries. So the market is slowing, and there's a lot of debate what's going to happen in those factories. And so it says if you put tariffs on Canada, you're putting tariffs on Ford to send big engines to Ford, because Ford imports engines makes engines in southwestern Ontario that go into heavy-duty pickup trucks built in Louisville, Kentucky. So if you tariff the engines, you make the truck more expensive. By extension, you're likely increasing the cost of iconic vehicle, the F-250, 350, that's very much desired by the American consumer. This is what Brandon Sweeney said. He is Trillium's. He's the think tank's managing director. Independent companies like such as Magna and Magna, which by the way is huge, and Martin have a large number of plants in the U.S., Mexico, and Canada, depending on the ability to easily ship goods across the borders. So more disruptions, you could see less production, and you could see more cost for consumers. And so Sweeney said, it's an opportunity to say, okay, Mexico, we can keep you in the tent, but we're going to ask you to change. He said in response to this disruption about the tariffs. But he added, the auto industry is so tightly integrated that we'd throw Mexico under the bus at our own peril. So major changes happening there. It's interesting. It's slowing down. They can't figure out what to do with Canada. You have cost issues. You have Mexico building a little bit more plants down there. Stellantis is building a bigger plant to build more F-150 or Ram 1500s down there. So lots of changes happening. But my Canadian friends are going to be hosed for a little bit. So sorry for that. Okay, so other things going on the YouTube channel. We have a Lincoln Nautilus drive. We have the Toyota Tundra sales I talked about. It's the highest sales level in 17 years. I was shocked to see the details on that. I've been covering Tundra for a while. It's a good video. I talked to you about what happened years ago. I show you sales numbers, where we're at. We have coming out this Sunday, I think, Jill's husband, John, has never off-roaded before. And they did a Nissan Rogue road trip, and he off-roaded. It's pretty interesting. Wife and I did a Honda Odyssey review that goes live, I think, tomorrow morning. We have a Genesis GV70, first look at that, and then Infiniti QX60 Lux. Yes, not major truck things for you guys, but some things to look at, something to check it out. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is a really kind of a cool thing that I've been following for a couple days now, or maybe like a week. It just kind of, every once in a while I check this, and I hadn't looked for a while, but then I decided to look and see what the total views are for the channel. And 49,930,676. So I bring it in this truck news recap because the channel gets between 20 to 30,000 views on an average day, sometimes 15. So this means it's Friday. If I get 20,000 views today and 25,000 views Saturday and Sunday, by Monday, we'll have crested the 50 million view mark. Monday or Tuesday, it will happen. I'm speechless on that. That's crazy. This idea I had in my head to do this and to just kind of create a channel. And then I started doing a video, and I wanted to do more video. And I want to give you guys more information and create these truck news recaps and things. I can't believe that little thought has spurred to 50 million views. So thank you for watching. Like I always say, thank you for watching. You make this channel happen. And I am blown away by that number. That's what I have for you this week on the Truck News Recap. Make sure check out those other videos talked about in this video, and also the website. More details over there, and the forum. We talk about those stories in the forums. Really good information in those forum members. Yeah, check those out as well. As always, thank you for watching. I will see you down the road.